obviously know who I am. We have Beth Martell and Suzette White. If you ever have done a loan with us, thank you, Amber, for recording it. I always forget. So this is being recorded. So if you guys need a copy of it, let me know. We will send it out. So we have Beth and Suzette. If you've ever done a pre-qual or a loan with me, you know who Beth and Suzette are. They are my left and right hand, and they're just an unbelievable team. And whatever you guys need as agents from me, you can get from them. They're smarter than me and much better looking. So next is, and we're losing Beth in a couple days. We're losing her for about 12 days, Beth, or 12 weeks?
I'm sure I'll be back early.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Amber Jervis. Amber helps me with these calls, and she's also my branch marketing director. If you guys need flyers, if you need help on co-branding, if there's anything you need from a marketing standpoint, feel free to reach out. She'll put her email address in the chat box, and hey, my team is your team. So I'm more than happy to help you guys out. So let's get started with the Let's Talk Credit. All right. So these are the type of questions that we get constantly on a daily basis from clients. Should I carry a balance? Should I close cards, etc.? We're going to cover all of these topics by the end of this class. I'm going to go back to this slide at the very end and answer anything that we don't get. Again, if there's any question that you have that we don't cover, put it in the chat box and we will go over it. So let's start. What is actually a credit score? Okay, it's just a number, right? It's a snapshot of your credit profile. They factor in a lot of different things. And I'm going to use the word algorithm quite often, and that's all they are. It's an algorithm, and it spits out a score, and it factors in a lot of different things, okay? So what are they looking for? We're lending them money. So that credit score is going to give us a determination if they are a good candidate to repay a debt, okay? Whether it's an old debt or a new debt. We're going to look at your past budget. We're going to look at the future budget. And the FICO models come up with a number that would determine your score, which is a level of risk. The lower the credit score, the higher the risk for the bank. The higher the credit score, the less risk of the bank. So a lot of different algorithms because there's a lot of different credit profiles, and we'll chat about that in a second. So there are three major credit bureaus that we pull. Now, when we look at a score, it does not matter which one falls in the middle. It could be Equifax today. Another client could have a TransUnion, another Experian. Whatever falls in the middle is what we're going to use. So what are these three companies? Well, all they do is collect data. If you said, hey, TransUnion's wrong, well, they're not wrong because that's the data that they collect. What would be wrong and incorrect is the creditor sending them the wrong data. If there's a late payment, if there's just something different than what you as a buyer see on your credit report, has nothing to do with the credit bureaus. It has something to do with the creditor, because the creditor sends the data to these credit bureaus and they just report data. That's all they do. They're data collection companies. So why are there three different scores from the three different bureaus? Well, they all have different algorithms. TransUnion algorithm is different than Equifax, which is different than Experian, which is why there are three different scores. All it is a variation of that individual algorithm, which creates that score, okay? And when we say score, we use the FICO, Fair Isaac Credit Reporting. That's what it is, Fair Isaac Credit Reporting. Okay, so that's what FICO is, right? There are several different types of FICO. When we're looking at a mortgage FICO, we look at the FICO models 2, 4, and 5. There are over 16 different FICO models. In the mortgage world, we use 2, 4, and 5, which represent mortgage for TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. There are times where people say, hey, I have a credit card, and Discover sends me a credit statement every month, and my score is X. That is not a mortgage FICO. That is a credit card FICO. Same thing with automobile. An automobile FICO might be different than a mortgage FICO, okay? Variations in the algorithm. Risk models, obviously the higher the risk, which is mortgages, the more stringent the FICO algorithm will be, right? They look at different things. So that's how FICO determines your score. So that's the difference between the three credit bureaus. That's what they do, and that's how we determine the score, okay? So what are we looking at? These are the different score ranges. They go all the way down below 620, We at Stockton Mortgage can do an FHA loan as low as 520, as long as they have 10% down with an approved eligible. As different conversations, but credit scores go all the way down. I've seen them as low as 510, 480, and I've seen them as high as 760, 780, and even 790. Recently, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have now put in place different ranges. It used to be 7 is the same thing as a 790. That is no longer the case. We have a 740 to 760 bucket. We have a 760 to a 780 bucket. And now we have a 780 and up bucket. So 780 is now better than a 740, where last week there was no difference between a 740 and a 780. Now there are more buckets. So this just says poor, marginal, ideal credit score. You want above a 700, right? You have more flexibility with loan programs, better interest rates, etc. So when we're talking to clients, we're shooting for that 700 and up. Obviously, the higher the better. I'm not saying that we can't get a loan below 700, but you have more flexibility with loan programs. All right, what is on a credit report? Obviously, your name, address, social, date of birth, and employment information. It's quite often that this information is not correct because all it takes is for you to pull credit and have a mistype in your name, and that flows with it, right? So you got to make sure that when you're getting your credit pulled, whether you are the borrower or your borrower's filling an application, to get the spelling correct. It's quite often and shocking, but people misspell their own names. You know, if they're a junior or a senior or a first, second, and third, that is important when you're putting that information on your application, because we're going to pull that credit report based off the information you provided. So your name, address, social, date of birth, and employment information is on the credit report. What we're looking at as far as trade lines, all mortgages, current and past, credit cards, loans, student loans, installment loans, any loan that you have credit on will be reported. Okay. How many times your credit was pulled? For inquiries, whether it's a mortgage or you go to Best Buy or you go to Ashley's Furniture, whatever it is, if you have your credit on a hard inquiry, it's going to show in your credit report. Okay. Bankruptcies, collections, and charge-offs. So the big question is that I get quite often, how long does a collection stay on your credit report? Be like, hey, it's going to fall off in 7 years. It's going to fall off. My 7-year mark is coming up. Well, there's some truth to that, but it's not 100% truth. A creditor could only come after you for 7 years. Okay. That doesn't mean they can't sell that lien to another collection agency, and that collection agency could start over with their 7 years. So it's a misconception that collections and judgments just fall off after 7 years. Yes, it happens, but there is a small chance that creditor could sell it to another collection agency. So bankruptcies, they do fall off after 10 years. And I don't care if it's a chapter 7, chapter 13, it's the same reporting. It's on for 10 years. All right, what isn't on a credit report? I just had this question come up the other day. Someone asked me, is there race and color on a credit report? We do not collect this data for your credit report. It does not show up if you're married or your age. Your date of birth is, you can figure out the age, but it doesn't say a 45 female that is white. It does not say that. It will say your date of birth, and you could just figure out your own, but it doesn't say the actual age. All right. So non-reporting trade lines. So your cell phone bill, your insurance, your utilities, gym memberships, etc., they do not get reported. Now here where it says rent, does it get reported? 99% of the times it doesn't, but there are some rental companies that do report it. It doesn't happen often, but it can be reported. Is this a good thing? Sure, you're building credit. Okay. We exclude this debt if it shows up on your liabilities, but it can help increase your credit score because it is an active trade line. Soft inquiries, you know, if you're going to do your employment, your insurance, let's say you get a new cell phone, these do not show up on your credit report as an inquiry. And public records, if there is a tax lien, certain judgments do not report on your credit report. If a child support and alimony judgment will. Okay, so most judgments will not, because the judgment is a lawsuit and that does not come on. So let's talk about the pie, right? This is 100% of where your score is driven from, right? We could dive deep into each one of these, and I'm going to. What looks like the most important piece of the puzzle is your history. We're going to go back as long as that trade line is open and see how many lates or how many non-lates that you have, right? Those follow with you for a very long time. So your payment history is so key on determining your score, and that is a big driving factor into the algorithm which drives your score, okay? Amounts owed, right? So this is your available credit, right? This is when people are maxed out that trade line, okay, which will determine your score. If someone has a $1,000 limit, but has $1,000 owed, well, that is going to have a negative impact on your score because it's going to show up on the algorithm as a maxed out account. See, amounts owed. So we're going to try to drive that number down. The key is lower than 30%. The people that run these credit companies, they say the sweet spot is 9%. If you want to maximize your score, if we're trying to get the most out of your score, they say 9% of the allowable limit. That's what you should be carrying a balance. I'm a firm believer, just pay it off. I don't think there's that much of a difference between 9% and 0. But if you can pay it off, if you really want to maximize the score, it's 9%. But the more you owe, the less your score will be, right? The available credit that you have wants to be greater than what you owe. And that is on all cards, okay? New credit's only 10%, and the type of credit uses only 10%. The types of credit is installment loans, is a mortgage debt, is revolving debt. In our world, revolving debt is credit cards. Those are more important than installment loans, right? So you want your revolving debt to be as little as possible because that factors into amounts owed. When you take out an installment loan, well, the payments usually the same, okay? Your allowable limit is just what you're borrowing. So revolving debt is where you really can fluctuate to that 9%, 10%, 20%, and then obviously maxed out. I've seen in cases where if you have $1,000 limit, you owe 1,200. Well, you're now maxed out and you owe more than you can. That is a very bad indicator for that algorithm, and your score will drop. Length of credit history, huge topic. We always say never close out an account that is valuable to you. The longer a trade line is open, the more valuable it is to that algorithm. You have a credit card open for 6 years, 7 years. The more length you have of that credit history, the more valuable it is. The moment you close it out, you lose all that history. Your score will drop. Now, on an installment loan, there's nothing you can do about being closed. You're done paying off the bill. Your car, if you financed an air conditioned unit, a boat, doesn't make a difference, right? The moment you finish paying off that installment loan, it's going to close out anyway. Nothing we could do about that. It's credit cards. Never close a credit card unless you really have to. The longer you have it open, the more valuable it is to that algorithm. So that's the pie chart. I think the three most important things is the history, the available credit, and the length of history. Second is the types and newer credit. So we want to have a nice balance of everything. So how do you maintain a good score? Well, pay your bills on time. That's just the number one key. Don't be late. So a lot of people want to set up auto payments so they don't forget. That's a great little trick. Or set yourself a reminder. You can pay down the debt, like I said, or raise the limits. If you owe $800 and it's $1,000 limit, that's an 80% utilization. Well, how do we raise that score? We can either A, lower the debt owed or increase the allowable limit, and that'll change the ratio of how much you owe versus how much you're allowed to borrow. So obviously paying off debt, that is the number one key. You want to pay your debt off and pay it on time. Okay. Don't close the accounts and limit your inquiries. You don't want to go out and start having a ton of different people run your credit. Every hard inquiry is on your credit report. Here's a question I get quite often. Number one, is it a hard inquiry when we pull your credit in the mortgage world? That is correct. It is a hard inquiry. Number two is, hey, Dave, how many times can I have my credit pulled without being a negative impact? Well, you can have your credit pulled as many times as you want in a 30-day period for the same reason, and it's considered one inquiry. It allows you to shop for mortgages. It allows you to go be a consumer and shop around. You should not be stuck with the first person that you have your credit report. That would be an injustice to you as a consumer. So if you go to Bank X, they pull your credit, and then come to us at Stockton and we pull it, no harm, no foul. It's in a 30-day window. Okay. I would not go out and get your credit pulled today by mortgages and then go to Cadillac and then go to Best Buy. Those are all separate inquiries, and those will all have a negative impact on your credit score. Another question I get quite often: how many points will my credit score drop? Well, it's very minimal if you have one inquiry, maybe 3 points, maybe 4. I think where people say, hey, my credit score dropped 20 points when you pulled it, it has nothing to do with the inquiry and more of the balances that you're running when that data was reported. That has more of an impact than one hard inquiry. It should not be more than 3 or 4 points for the one inquiry lowering your credit score. It's more of a factor of that pie chart that we just talked about. So let's go back to that balance. How do we understand credit? How do we create a great credit score? Well, we're going to have a high balanced difference between installment loans, revolving accounts, and a mortgage if you have one. And I've always say time heals wounds. It's not that you just can't buy a house today. You just may not be able to buy one today. Time heals wounds. The further away you are from negative items that are being reported, the less impact it has on the algorithm, which determines the score. Something brand new, if you have a 30-day late that just happened last month, then you'll see your score drop significantly. If it's a brand new collection that was just reported, again, your credit score will drop significantly. The further you are away from it, the less impact it has on the algorithm. All right, factors that determine your credit score. Okay. Hold on, back to this. Oh, got a fancy little slide here. Let's see, it's the bucket, right? So late payments, collections, maxed out credit, it's going to drain the bucket. Bankruptcy, foreclosures, all these things have a negative impact. It's draining the bucket. So these are the type of things that are crucial. Well, how do we fill that bucket up without having a negative impact? Pay your bills on time. Don't max out cards. Have a good balance of credit cards / installment loans. All right. Let's use the chat box for the next couple of slides. I just want to see your answers. The balance on a car loan impacts your score as much as the balance on a credit card. So if you are not a mortgage advisor, you can play along. I know there's a bunch of people that know the answers to this. Christy says true. The balance on a car impacts your score as much as the balance on your credit card. Danny, false. Anyone else? The correct answer is false. Danny gets a prize, right? Credit card utilization is the number 2 impact on your FICO score. Coming back to that utilization, a credit card is more important in the algorithm than an installment loan. All right, next one. True or false? Is it better to have a low balance on a credit card than zero balance? What do you think? Low balance or zero balance? Pay on time. Okay, I like it. Low balance or zero balance? Correct answer is it is better to keep a low balance than a zero balance. Remember that 9%? That is the sweet spot. That's how you're going to maximize your credit score. Not saying that zero balance is not a good thing, but we're asking, is there a difference between carrying a small balance versus carrying a zero balance? It is better to carry a small balance because it goes with the history. It goes with the utilization. You are a good candidate. You use it and pay your bills on time. Next one. Here's the question that we get as mortgage advisors every single day. Let's talk about Credit Karma. If you have a score for Credit Karma, is there a difference between a FICO score and Credit Karma? What do you think? False. We've got Michelle saying true. The same. It is false. Credit Karma is great for watching your credit. It is a great credit management company. You get to see what happens every day, every week on your credit. If someone opens up a fraudulent account, Credit Karma is going to monitor that for you. But it is not a FICO, right? They do not use FICO. They use a totally different platform. So when someone says, hey, I use Credit Karma and I have a 680 score, as soon as I hear that, I try to teach the client saying, listen, more than likely, your credit score is not even close to a 680. I know that Credit Karma shows you at a 680, But Credit Karma is not what we use in the mortgage world. It is more just a credit watching company. It's great to report your stuff and to watch it, but do not judge your mortgage FICO with Credit Karma because it's a completely different platform. I've noticed anywhere between a 40 and 60 point difference sometimes, right? Someone says, I have a 640 score and they have a 610 or a 600. And they're just like, no way, I can't believe it. I'm like, we're not using the same FICO, right? It is the credit monitoring service. And they're good at what they do, but they're not mortgages. True or false? Having more than one mortgage company pull your credit score will hurt. I think we already answered this question. False. You can go out and rate shop. You can mortgage shop. If you're not happy with that first company, by all means, go find another mortgage originator. Hopefully you're happy with us on the first go around and you won't have to do that. But if your clients ask you this question, this is the answer to it. You can have your credit pulled as many times you want in a 30-day period, and it is considered one inquiry. Okay, how can we help? When someone comes to us and says, Dave, I have a 610, how do I get to a 640? Well, we have software that can figure that out for them. We've got software that knows when, if I ever pulled your credit, it'll notify me if you have your credit pulled again. And I immediately reach out to that client and says, hey, Michelle Rose, I noticed you had your credit pulled. There's a lot of fraud out there. I just want to make sure that you know about that. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm moving to North Dakota. I'm like, all right, have fun, right? Hey, have at it, right? Or, hey, I was shopping for a car or whatever. Okay, great. Just want to make sure you know that. So I have software that notifies me when they have their credit pulled, and I reach out to them to make sure that they are protected. What else do? We have the software that helps them raise their score. So if they're not qualified now, they may be qualified down the road. Here's what you can do. Here's some tips on how to move your score up. If I have X amount of dollars to work with, I can tell you to pay your debt down, which will help you drive up your score. I get another question a lot. Dave, how do I increase my score? It's not that I have high debt. I'm a 22-year-old young lady. I don't have any debt. I don't have any credit. What do I do? Go open up a credit card. Oh, I tried that. I can't. Well, go open up a secure credit card. What that means is walk into your banking institution, and a secure credit card just means prepaid credit card. It's usually about $300. You put $300 into an account, and now you have a $300 limit. It's reported to the credit bureaus the same exact way as a credit card. When we pull a credit report, we have no idea if that's a secure or unsecured. Now, I can figure it out when I know it's brand new, we have not much credit, it's only $300. I know right away that it's a secure credit card, but I don't care. The algorithm does not know if it's a secured or unsecured. So what I advise people is go open up a credit card for $300. Use that credit card for fuel and groceries. You got to purchase that kind of stuff, right? Purchase it and pay it off when you get paid. You replenish the 300, and now you created credit history. You can do this more than once. You can have two credit cards. Use one for fuel, one for groceries. Now you have two trade lines. After a while, that young woman or young man or whoever it is, all of a sudden, that mailbox is going to be full with offers. I promise you that. And then go pick out a good credit card that will give you $1,000 limit. Do not over exceed yourself. We're still going to use it as needed, right? For fuel, groceries, stuff that we can't live without. A lot of advice that I give my clients is utilize your credit cards more than your debit card. I personally use my credit cards for everything, and I pay them off at the end of the month, and my credit has been built over the years. I get things now in return for using my credit cards. If you're a traveler, you can get points. If you just like cash, you can get something that pays you for utilizing it. This is the advice that I give someone who wants to start building credit. Utilizing a credit card more than a debit card is not only going to build credit, but there's a protection behind it. If someone steals your debit card information, well, they have access to your cash, right? Getting your cash back is very hard. If someone steals your credit card, you just close out the card, they send you a new one. A fraud case is now opened internally with Discover or Amex. It does not affect daily day. But if someone steals the money out of your checking account, well, that can be crucial to your day-to-day. Your bills aren't paid, food's not on the table, your mortgage might not be able to get paid. So utilize your credit cards more than your debit card if you have the opportunity to. That's the advice that I give and how we help borrowers. So we have something called a what if scenario. What if I pay down this debt? What if I opened up a new trade line? What if I paid this collection off? What would happen? We can run these on a case to case basis for each borrower and determine what your new credit score is. Something that I mentioned the word collection, right? So should we pay collections off? Well, not necessarily, right? It depends on what the collection is and how old it is, right? I don't like paying off big collections that are old, right? Because you're now waking it up. It might have a negative impact on your credit score. So the answer to that question is case by case, it depends on what it is. Now, in 2022, a law was passed about regarding medical collections. It's the best thing that could have happened to credit scores and how medical collections are being reported. It used to be a medical collection was reported like anything else. If you paid it, it was still showing as a collection, but a zero balance. Still has a negative impact on your score. Zero balance is better than a balance, but it still shows up as a collection even with a zero balance. The algorithm reads that. But now if you pay a medical collection off, by law, the medical collection has to be removed like it never existed. So if I see a medical collection that is affordable to pay off, the first thing I tell the clients is pay that off. Your score will have an immediate impact. We did this last year. I'll get to your questions in 1 second. I did this last year for a client, and they had a bunch of little small collections. One was $82, one was $150. I think they paid off less than $2,000 with their medical collections. They were all removed. Score jumped over 100 points. Boom, huge, right? So I always recommend now, since the new law, if you have medical, pay it off. Now, if there's a $30,000 or $40,000 medical collection, we're not going to advise that. That's just too much money. But if it's affordable and they can pay it off, that'll have an immediate impact on your score. So someone comes to me and says, hey, Dave, my credit score is low, but there's certain things that I can do before recommending them to a credit repair company. If there's a lot of late payments and judgments and liens and collections, charge-offs, yeah, immediately I'm going to say, let's go find a specialist that can help get some of those removed. But if it's clean, they just got high balances, yeah, I'm going to come up with a plan and say, listen, I need you to pay down a couple credit cards, get the utilization much lower. That'll have an impact on your score. This is the type of advice that we're going to give. Okay. Pay off a collection, maybe. More severe cases, credit restoration. Let's jump into, we have a Christy question. I think that's the slide. There's a bunch of case studies I did. I think we're going to get on to that, to the part 2 of this. I want to go back to that first slide and see if I answered most of the questions, right? If our son is about to be 18, would it be best for him to get a credit card in his name? Yes, absolutely. Authorized user is great, but he's 18. It's time for him to get his own card. No reason why he can't. So my advice for this question is your son, Christy, I know personally because I know your family. He's mature enough and responsible enough to have his own card. So if that child is responsible enough to understand what the pros and cons of a credit card is, then I would say yes. But if we're comparing a credit card in his name versus an authorized user, at 18, I would say he can have his own card. As long as we at home teach our children or any young person how credit cards can benefit us and how they also can get us in a lot of trouble. Just because we have credit doesn't mean you use it. We're not going out and buying Nikes and Prada purses. We're using it to create credit history and for protection. Any other questions so far? Looks like Meryl's typing. Get gas in the card, turn around and pay for it. That's right. So we use our cards, pay them off at the end of the month because they will not have interest. If you're using their money on credit, paying it off when you get the bill in full. So again, things that we can't live without, fuel, groceries. I even put some of my auto payments on my credit card, my gym membership, stuff like that, my cell phone bill. I put it on credit and then I pay it off when I get that credit card bill, just because I'm building credit. If you ask to increase your credit limit on revolving debt, will it affect your score negatively? No, they're going to do a soft pull on you. So that's not a hard inquiry. And then your increase your allowable amount is going to increase, therefore creating more the gap between what you owe and what your limit is. So available credit, remember, is 30% of our algorithm. The more available credit you have, the better you are. Okay. That's why we don't close credit cards out. Let's say you have 5 years, 6 years, and you have a $10,000 limit. You close that out. Not only are you losing the history, you're losing that 10,000 of available credit. That's another reason why we don't close credit cards. Okay. Great question. Let's go back to slide number 4. Should I carry balance my credit cards? We already went over this. I would say if you're going to less than 10%, but you're trying to get that utilization down as low as possible. Should I close the cards I'm not using? Never. Unless it's a terrible card, you hate it. You know, if the circumstance is right, if it's all of a sudden now it's a $350 a year annual fee, yeah, we don't want that. But I wouldn't close it out unless you have others available, because if you close that out, you will have a negative impact on your score. Okay. Should I pay off collections? Medical, yes, if affordable. If they're fairly new collections, I would pay them off. I mean, it's your debt. If they're old collections, I wouldn't. Okay. Because you're waking up that collection from the algorithm. The longer it is, remember that slide where I said the further away you get from that collection, the easier it is on the algorithm. So if you have something that you haven't touched in 5 years, I don't care. Will a mortgage pull hurt my score? 3 to 4 points, if that. When should you run my credit? Whenever the buyer's ready to make a commitment on buying a house. If they come to me and says, Dave, I want to buy in 6 months. Well, I'm not going to run your credit now unless you say, hey, I want to see where I'm at so I can fix things. Let's get a baseline. Great, I'll do it now. But if they just want to get a rough idea on how the mortgage process works, but they're not ready because they just signed a lease for 9 months, and there's no reason to pull your credit, right? Only if I need to see it to come up with a plan. Once they're serious about buying, let's pull your credit then. I'm not going to write a pre-approval until that credit is run, because that's validating credit. We're validating income. We're validating assets. So once they are serious about moving forward, that's when I will run their credit. How long is a credit report good for? I get this question, and I think someone asked, I think Christy, you asked me this a couple days ago. How long is a pre-approval good for? Well, the pre-approval is tied to the credit report, which is good for 120 days. So when someone asks, hey, what happens after 120 days? I tell them, I'm not going to pull your credit on the 121st day, but in order to write a new pre-approval, if it's borderline, I have to rerun it. If they have a 760 credit score, the DTI is 12, I'm not running their credit again. We're going to run it when they're on the contract, because running someone's credit every 120 days, that's not healthy. No reason for that. How long does it take to raise my score? Well, each creditor reports the data every 30 days. Every creditor reports it at a different time. So Discover might be on the 2nd, Amex might be on the 6th, Visa might be on the 9th, Ford Motor might be on the 15th. So every single creditor is different how they report it and when they report it. So if you're paying debt off, okay, if you're paying the debt off, it takes 30 days for the credit reports to fully adjust itself, right? Because each creditor reports at a different time. Your credit report could balance out, update in 3 days. Again, we just don't know. So every 30 days is when you'll see the final adjustments. I don't use credit. Can I get a loan? Well, yes. No credit is actually better than bad credit. If I pull someone's credit report and they have nothing, no trade, I can use what is called alternative credit. Got to have a rent history. We could put that in there. If you're living in mom's basement, that's not credit history. If you're even paying cash, that's not credit history. We got to show you've been making the last 12 months of your rental payments, and I can use that as an alternative credit. The client can also call up their insurance company, be like, hey, can I get my payment history over the last 12 months? They provide that. That is a source of a trade line. Same thing, gym memberships. You can call Verizon or Sprint and say, can I have my payment history? Stuff that is credit that doesn't get reported on the credit bureau. I can use that as alternative credit. You give me 3+ rent. Now, in my world, I will consider that a 620 score. Okay. So no credit is actually better than bad credit, because we can use alternative trade lines. We just need a bunch of different things to move forward. So yes, you can get a loan. Should I take out a loan to build my credit? Well, I would prefer a credit card so you use it, but taking out an installment loan to do so, it's going to build your credit score. It's a trade line, right? Remember, balance. I'd like you have one or two trade lines, whether it's one credit card and one installment loan, two credit cards and an installment loan. The problem is when you have an installment loan, you're getting something and maybe you might not need it, right? You're buying something that's not necessary. I'd rather you have a credit card, but there's nothing wrong with having an installment loan. Okay. And we went over why is my Credit Karma so different? Because it's not a mortgage FICO. They use a different platform. So we got to all these questions. I'll open up the floor to any questions that you guys might have that we haven't chatted about. Nothing. Crickets. Well, I hope this was helpful for you guys. You can take some of this information, bring it back to your clients. Obviously, when your clients have these type of questions, you can get us on the phone and the three of us can chat about it. But this is just more information in the toolbox for you so you understand what it takes to build up a credit score. What are the driving factors? These are type of questions that we're consistently asked on a daily basis as mortgage advisors, and this is the information we're giving back. We're going to run a part 2 of this. I'm going to go over a bunch of case files. I'm going to bring in a credit repair specialist so we can have a live Q&A and find out how they do things, how they bring up scores, right? Very important stuff. Invite your buyers. Hopefully they can get on there too. We'll do a recap of today and then, teeter right into the credit repair specialist. So awesome. Under an hour. I hope everyone has a great day. If you guys need us for any other mortgage help, you know where we are. You can always reach me and my team. I hope to see you back next month. You can share this with your colleagues. And if there's any other topics that you guys want us to chat about, let us know. We're always open for different ideas and we'll get it done. Have a wonderful day, guys.